Welcome back to our Thursday night fly tying sessions. I'm Mike Kelly from Project Healing Waters Omaha, and I'd like to thank John Wright and Flatwater Fly Fishers for hosting these Zoom sessions this year. Next week, we'll do a deep dive on dry fly wings. And on the 19th, it'll be an open topic, and we'll just kind of figure out as we go. We kind of did some of those last year. This is where you can ask questions, get help with a tying technique, certain material, a fishing situation, or share something with the group. We'll also have guest presenters again this season. Tim Flagler will be presenting for us in March. And I'm working on a couple more. We should get Tim Jacobs back. He's the one that did the those really cool bass bugs, deer hair bass bugs. He said he would come back this season, and then we've got Chris Kruger. He's another fly tyer I met at the Denver fly show. Should be able to work something out with him as well. Tonight, the topic will be upping your woolly bugger game. Should be able to get through 3 flies. I'm pretty sure we can do that. But this will be the first one. It's called the Thin Mint woolly bugger. I'm going to kind of go through a little bit of history. The woolly bugger has a fuzzy history, pun intended, I guess. It starts with a fly called the gray palmer, which or the palmer worm. I have a book here that talks about way back in the 16 and 1700s, a fly called the palmer fly was pretty popular. They basically either fished mayfly imitations or a fly like that palmer fly. The gray palmer was featured in a 1651 book, The Art of Angling by Thomas Barker. It was thought to represent a moth or a caterpillar. Over the years, many English, Scottish, and Irish flies used this technique that became known as palmering. You can see this technique in a lot of popular flies that serve different purposes today, such as Ed Story's crackleback from like 1950s, 1952, I think. The Griffith's gnat is actually a dry fly. It's named for but not created by Orvis's George Griffith. The woolly worm, Yuk Bug, and the woolly bugger. The woolly worm was kind of a step up from the palmer fly. It was thought to have originated in the 1920s in the Ozark region of Missouri and Arkansas. I don't think we actually have anybody from St. Louis area today, but this was fished as a stonefly and dragonfly nymph, also terrestrials. Early versions didn't have a tail, but by the time it was popularized in the 1950s, it had a red yarn tail. The woolly bugger, which we're going to focus on the evolution of it, was credited to Russell Blessing of Pennsylvania in the 1960s. And then that's what this is a version of the woolly bugger. The Yuk Bug is a version that it's a variant from Al Troth, who's credited with he's the one who created the elk hair caddis. He came up with his own variant in the 1970s using squirrel tail for the tail and rubber legs, and then change it to grizzly hackle. Really cool fly. The Thin Mint, though, was first tied by Bob Gaviglio of Sun River Fly Shop in Oregon in about 1986. So we'll get started on the materials for the thin mint. Really, with the woolly bugger, it's probably one of the easiest flies to tie. It's easy to cast. There's hardly any wind resistance at all, especially when it's wet. It's really easy to fish. If you don't weight it, it'll sink real slowly, and you can fish it in shallow water very slowly. If you weight it, you can get it down deeper. It can be fished under an indicator. It could be stripped, just casted and stripped. You can drift it in if you're in a river or a stream. You can drift it. You can swing it like a wet fly. It works in warm water, cold water. It works in salt water for a lot of saltwater species or fresh water. Like I said, you can fish it in a stream or in still water, and you can catch big or small fish depending on how big you tie it. Most woolly buggers, you're probably not going to see them much smaller than a size 10, and usually up to about a size 4. This is a 6. So for the materials, it's a little bright on there, so I'm just going to take that crystal flash out of the way. For the tail, it's going to be a mix, like you saw in the sample that I showed, of olive, brown, and black marabou. The body is peacock herl, and then I'll use a grizzly saddle hackle that's real nice. It's kind of a chartreuse grizzly, and of course wire like in every other woolly bugger. And then I'll use some pearl flash in the tail. I have the recipe here. Again, this version is normally tied in a maybe size 2 to 8. You can do it with or without a bead, with or without lead weight underneath it. If you're going to use a bead, you're going to want at least a 3X hook, because you lose some of the hook shank by using a bead. And then the ingredients are basically as I described them. Stop this share. And I'm going to use a size 6 hook here. This is 3X long. Nymph streamer hook. And I'm going to be using a 6/0 140 denier black thread. And on most of this type of fly, I start about an eye length back just to make sure I don't crowd the eye, because there's a lot of materials that go on here. I prefer to tie and fish these without a bead. Like I said, I like to fish these a lot in shallow water. And with a bead, you're going to get it in the bottom, you're going to get it in the weeds, and it's a little harder to control. With it, without a bead like this, you can let it sink as long as you want to get it a little bit deeper, but you can control the control the drift a little bit by just stripping it real slow. For first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out here and show you some tip or two here on the tails. Now, since we're going to have 3 different colors, you don't want to overdo it on the marabou. So I have a piece of marabou here. I've already stripped the stuff off of there. It probably would strip a little bit more off. And basically strip it down to where you have a small amount like that. Now, a lot of people you see moisten it by using spit. I've got a wet paper towel in this little shot glass. And if you wet the marabou like that, it keeps it a little bit more under control. And I want the tail to be about a hook shank in length. So I'll just pinch it there right behind the eye of the hook and measure my hook shank. And I'll come back and take about 3 tight turns right there at the bend of the hook. Now, for the brown, I'm going to do the same thing. I'll basically strip back all this other fluff. And if you're doing multiple flies, you could strip off some of that fluff off the sides and use that for your brown section. But I'll do the same thing, get it moist, kind of control the fluffiness there a little bit. Measure my length. I can actually measure it to the green as well. Set that right on top. Take about 3 more wraps. And then I'll do the same with the black. This is a little bit longer of a quill. So I'm just going to strip the middle back, cut that out of the way. And that's still a little bit fluffy. I'm going to take some of that off just so I don't have too much. Moisten it. And just measure that to the end of the brown. And tie that in. So just about 3 wraps. And then I'm going to just take spaced wraps here. Just to get all this forward. And then I'll cut off the excess. And I've got an even foundation there for the body. I want to come back a little bit farther on that tail to about right there. So when I let the thread hang down, it's at the barb of the hook. So there's my tail. Next thing I'm going to tie in is a piece of wire. Well, first I want some flash. So I'm going to take 1 strand of this pearl. This is Flashaboo. Fold it in half. That's actually 2 strands stuck together. I'm going to fold it in half. And then I'm going to take just a couple of these on one side. Take a couple wraps. Hold that down and then just fold this back on the other side. So now I've got a little bit of flash on each side, and I'll just cut that back where the other one was and save that for another fly. So that's what we have so far. Now I'll tie in the piece of wire. You can use gold, silver, copper. I have a lot of gold, so I'm just going to take a piece about maybe 9 or 5 inches long. and tie that in. And then I'm going to take about maybe 3 or 4 strands of peacock herl that are all about the same length. See what I got here. There's 3 good ones right there. And this one. So I'll even those up so my butts are even. That just gives me some control when I'm holding on to it. And then I'm going to cut about the top, say 3/4 of an inch. That's usually pretty brittle. And I'll tie that peacock herl in, and then I'll just advance that forward, tie down the wire. Now I'll just take this peacock herl and just wrap it forward. A relatively fluffy peacock body there. Hopefully I have long enough herls. Looks like I'll just make it. Cut those loose. Now I'm going to take my, so this hackle started off, zoom out. That's how it was plucked from the beast. And the stem is real thick right here and brittle. But as you come up the feather here, you've got, it narrows off significantly right in here. So right about in here is where I have usable feather. So I basically did the same thing with this one, stripped it. So I have the colorful side facing me. And I'm going to take a wrap over it, come around the back. Whoops. Start that over again. Take a wrap, come around the back side, and then back over the front again to lock that in good. If there's any hackle stem there, I can just kind of fold that back. I don't think I can. It's not long enough, so. There it goes. All right. Now with that nice and tight, I'll take my hackle. And the first thing you want to do on a woolly bugger is take 2 or 3 wraps right here at the front. If you just start spiraling it backwards, then as you pull that fly through the water, it can act like a corkscrew and actually twist up your tippet. So I'm just going to palmer this down the body. Till I get back to where my wire is. I'm going to grab that wire. Excuse me for bumping the camera. And I'm going to come around one good turn at the back just to hold that feather, and then I can let go of it. And then just come right through the hackle. And if you go fast enough, those hackles will spring out of the way and you won't tie too many of them down. Well, that's up to the front. Take a couple good wraps over that to hold it in place. Fold it back and kind of dog leg it down. Make a nice smooth ramp there. And then holding my thread tight, I can move it around and break it loose. There it goes. And then I'll come back here on this hackle and clip it off. Come to the back of the head right there. And whip finish. Little head cement. And that's a thin mint woolly bugger. Probably the most popular woolly buggers are always olive black. A lot of people say you really don't need another fly except for a black woolly bugger. I prefer not to fish that way. I like to try to outsmart the fish and do what I can to match the hatch or do what I can to outsmart them. But if it comes down to it and fishing is real tough, you know that you can always use a woolly bugger and usually get them. That's one of those flies. This one with the different colors, to me, in different colors of water, the contrast between the colors can kind of help make it visible. But it also gives an illusion of movement and life. That's the first one. Now the next one we're going to do is this monstrosity, the Yuk Bug. There it is. For the Yuk Bug, the tail is squirrel tail. It uses grizzly hackle. In this case, we'll use black chenille and rubber legs. I don't have white rubber leg material, so you get what you get and you can't throw a fit. Let me see here. So let's see. Squirrel tail right here. And one of these sessions, I'll show you a trick with that with a hair dryer. For rubber legs, a lot of what I use nowadays is from bass skirts. Like at Bass Pro or, places like that, you can buy, these are for spinner baits. You can buy this, has like a rubber band in the middle of it and different colors of rubber material. And so I just go in there and grab, I'll use chartreuse again. Just grab and pull, and one of them snaps out of there, and then you've got your rubber leg material. So switch cameras back. So I'll go down to a size 8 for this one. Again, I'm using a 3X long hook. I just like the looks of it. I'll start an eye length back and just lay down a thread base Squirrel tail is a very slippery material. If you tie a big clump on the hook, it doesn't matter how tight your thread is, it doesn't compress. So what happens is if you pull on it or work it enough, some of the hairs in the center fall out, which or can get pulled out. And what that does is then loosens the loosens the grip on the other hairs, and eventually it can all just pull out. So I'm going to take a clump off the side of, just fold it off the side of the tail here to where the tips are fairly even. So about 90 degrees out from the tail there. Cut it right at the base of the tail. I'm just going to, if I have any short ones, I'm just going to pull those out. Now I want to measure, again, about a hook shank in length, and bring it back here. Now I want to take some really tight wraps, say 3 wraps, and then I'll fold this up, and keeping the thread as tight as I can, I'll take about 3 wraps there, fold it back down, and make a few wraps. So now that's really kind of locked that in and should keep it from pulling loose. So I'm just going to bring that forward with spaced wraps just to get it bound down. Cut it loose. This one, hater right here. Just cut him out. Okay. A few more butt ends there that are, all right. So that's the tail portion. For the chenille, you can do 2 things. You want to keep the body pretty smooth. So you can start at the front here and wrap that whole piece of chenille back to the end. Or another trick with most chenille is I'll come to the back here, take a couple card widths of chenille off the card there. Now I'm going to take the end of this and just start pulling at it and tease out the sideways fibers to where all I have left is this string core. And then I'll tie it in by that core. And then that gives me no bulk at all. So I have that tied down securely. And I'll just put it over here on my material clip just to keep it out of the way. Now, actually, I'll do this with it. Use a little hair clip just to get that out of the way. Now, this is a really good trick with the rubber leg material that'll save you a lot of hassle with a fly like this. I'm going to put my thread at about the point where I want the back legs to be. So if I kind of divide this hook shank into thirds, I'll have some up here and some right there. So I'm going to take this strip. It's actually about maybe 4 inches long. I'll just fold it in the middle and even up those tips. And then I'll come back through and cut it. So now I have 2 2-inch pieces. So I'm going to take this right in the middle. What I'll do is I'll fold it around my thread again. And then once I get it up here, I can put some tension on it. And as I wrap my thread around, I can just place that exactly on top if I want it. take another wrap, and then I'll come around the back of this guy and try to get it positioned to where those legs are kind of sticking out to the side. Then I'll come forward to where my next one's going to be. So that front third, and I'll do the same thing. Set it right on top. Get some wraps to bind that in place. And then I'll come back forward to the head. Now, we're going to be wrapping chenille forward. We also need the hackle. How am I going to do that?
Wire on that, Mike?
Well, let's go ahead and work around these to put the wire in. And I'll show you where the trouble is. If you look at it, I'm trying to wrap around the hook and I've got these legs in my way, right? I'll show you how to solve that, but I can't do it yet. So work my way back. To here, tie in my wire. So there's a fly called the Pat's rubber legs. There's the Yuk Bug, and there's some other flies that use rubber legs like material like this. But here's a good trick. You take the front legs and right up here at the head, I'm going to twist my thread counterclockwise as if I'm looking down on it. And that makes it kind of reach back so I don't. And I'm just going to take 3 or 4 wraps right there at the head. And I'm going to take these back legs and do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now all those legs are out of my way. And that lets me, whoops. That lets me come in here with my chenille now. Take a couple wraps in the back here. And then I'll back this off. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I can take wraps up to the front legs and then reverse those wraps. Now they weren't in my way at all. When I wrap that chenille, that's going to put them out to the sides like that. And I'll tie it off. Then I'll go back to, this is actually, you can see I use the tip for a Adams wing. Hopefully this will be long enough. I think it will be. Strip it back to where the stem is narrow. Tie it in. I'm going to grab it with the hackle pliers. Make a couple wraps at the front. and then palmer backwards. To the waiting wire. It doesn't necessarily have to be reverse wrapped. I'm going to do it the opposite way this time, do it the normal way. Tie it over the hackle and then come forward. And that wire holds the hackle stem all the way up the body like that and protects it from fish's teeth. And then right there. Break that loose and whip finish. And that's a Yuk Bug. When my laptop got unplugged and it died, then when it rebooted, it wanted to install updates. So that's why it took so long to get back.
No fun. Microsoft.
I would probably cut these a little bit shorter.
Keep trying to tell you guys, switch to Linux, you'll never have that issue.
I don't even know how to spell Linux. There's the Yuk Bug. Now, let's say I want an even smaller woolly bugger. I can go all the way down to an 18, but I can't go down to an 18 using regular chenille and rubber legs and all of that kind of stuff. So all you really have to do is just downsize your materials. So I'm going to go to a size 16. I'm going to use this Semperfly Nano Silk just because that's the olive that I had. And without wax, it's a little tough to get it started. Because it's so slippery. But once you get it tied down, there, I'm good. Now, I'm going to get another piece of wire. Here's my wire. One that's long enough. Now, with this wire, usually, I don't know what size this is. I put it on a different spool. But with most of this wire, it's so brittle, you can just snap it with your fingers. You don't have to dull your scissors by cutting it. So I have my piece of wire. Now, for the tail on this, since I'm going smaller, I can use at the base of here's that feather again. There's usually some marabou looking stuff down here. You can use that. You can use fur, like here's some rabbit fur in an olive color. You can use a little piece of that. Any saddle hackle usually has that same fluffy stuff. I kind of like this barred stuff, so I'm going to use.
Stonkers will work really well too, Mike.
Zonker strips. Right, just like this, basically a strip version of this rabbit fur.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually easier to get a piece of hair from, because you're not fighting all the rest of the hair that's all around it. You're just picking it off a narrow strip. So I'm going to take this real short stuff off the base of it. You can see right here, some of that stuff's real short and then it gets longer. I think this is the stuff I want right in here. Nice and fluffy and also barred. So I'm going to strip that off and just gather it in a bunch like that. And then that'll be my tail. So I'll come back to the end of the shank and tie that down. Now I'm going to kind of moisten that a little bit to tie it down. There we go. Hard to get control of those butts. There we go. So there's my tail. Now for the body, I'm actually going to use ostrich herl. So just like peacock herl, basically, just grab one of those strands off of there. I have one here in a clip. And then some of this is kind of ratty at the bottom. I'll just cut about a ½ inch off. And then tie that in. Tie in my piece of wire. And bring it forward. Really good for bluegill. Good under a, even, you know, if you tie this not weighted, this is even good, like with a dry dropper. Use like a big chubby Chernobyl, a big foam fly, or even a gurgler or something like that, and just hang one of these down below it. You can take that ostrich herl then and wrap it forward, and you've got a real nice fuzzy, just like peacock herl. You can use dubbing if you want, especially in the smaller sizes, 18, 20. Maybe I'd use dubbing. So there's your body. Now I'm going to try, where's my hack? There they are. I think this one's a little bit smaller. Strip it back to where I have usable stem, meaning it's not real. It's where it really starts to narrow here. I'll tie that in. Nice and tight. Hackle pliers. Probably got lost in the panic of the reboot. I'll move my wire back out of the way. So, and this is a small fly, and I'm doing it so far away from you. A little more light on the subject. All right. Couple wraps in the front. I knew that was going to happen. Couple wraps in the front. And then just palmer it backwards. Grab my wire. Forward. Trap in that wire. Kind of hard to make a head with this tiny thread, but if you're real brave, you can snap that hackle forward. And there's your micro woolly bugger.
Yeah. I have some, what I think is chenille that is 1 millimeter or 0.045
Right.
in, in inches. It's on a wood spool. So
That'd definitely work
Definitely.
on smaller size flies. This is a woolly worm. It's basically a woolly bugger with either a red tuft of hackle like that, or red wool is what it was more commonly used. This is the crackleback. It has a strip of peacock herl along the back and a yellow body with that. That's actually a dry fly. You float it along, and then as it gets down to the end of the drift, you pull it under and actually fish it as a wet fly.
That's an extremely effective fly down at Bennett Springs in Missouri with a blue crystal flash over the top of it.
Right. That was
someone gave me one of those. I caught something with it too.
Ed Story, who started the company Feathercraft in St. Louis. Created that fly. This is a Kate McLaren. It's an Irish lock style fly. Originally used seal's fur. I used what is that stuff? Angora goat or something like that. It's supposed to be kind of a substitute for seal's fur. You can see the long, shaggy fur kind of going even longer than the hackle. But that's one of those Irish type flies that use that same palmering. And then there's a little Griffith's gnat that I'm sure you might have seen before. They're all kind of variations of a palmered fly. So
gonna try doing a soft hackle